Welcome to Season 7 of CX in the Wild. We're happy to have you back on the adventure with us again.
All right, welcome everyone to the show today. We have an amazing guest, Leahanne Hobson, with us, a visionary leader in customer experience and the founder of how do we say this name?
It's Alinea.
Alinea Partners.
Yes.
Wow, that's what I get for being international. Alinea
Well,
Partners.
I wanted it to sound that way, so it worked.
Perfect. She has a rich background in high tech and telecommunications. She's a trailblazer in female leadership. Leahanne has transformed channel ecosystems for global IT and telco companies. Her innovative approach in sales readiness, offer development, and managed services has set new standards in the industry. And when I say industry, I mean internationally. And she is also the pioneer of the unique B2B secret shopping program, where she and her team have brought hardware, software, and services from nearly 800 high-tech companies globally. She has bought hardware, software, services, and nearly 800 high-tech companies globally. Here's the thing. I write these things and I read them, but then I get inspired as I read through them. What I will say for you, the listener, is what inspired me about this conversation is this idea of secret shopping in the B2B space. The intelligence it gathers for companies. I would say, while it's not unheard of before secret shopping, the innovative approach to applying this element of customer experience in B2B is, let's just hear about it. All right, Leahanne, can you share with us your journey about founding Alinea Partners and how you integrated these newfangled customer experience strategies into your business?
Yeah, sure. First, thank you for inviting me. We've already had a couple of really good conversations, so I'm looking forward to this one. Why did I start Alinea Partners? Basically, they threw me out of Avaya. I had been with high tech since the 80s. Helped start a PR agency in the States, which you can hear from my accent. And when the company was sold, I realized I didn't want to become a little fish in a big pond because the other company was much bigger. And I had at the time in my early 20s, naivete to think that I could be a director in that company because I was a director in this little company. So I decided to do something else, threw my toys out of the pram, as they say, and walked out the door. I then coincidentally had an opportunity to visit Vienna. So I packed up some things and moved sight unseen. 3 months later, well, it didn't seem like it at the time, but when I think back on it, I suppose it was. But I got here and there's a really rich international community. So being young and wanting to meet people, I was able to fall into that very easily. And then I heard through the grapevine that the UN was looking for someone to do crisis communications for them, or a division of the UN. So I went in and did that. And a couple months later, somebody came to me and said that IBM was looking for someone to do marketing in Central and Eastern Europe. And if English was the first language, they would be really happy. So I then started working at IBM. I was there a number of years during the Gerstner days, and was on his extended communications team. Then they asked me if I wanted to go back to the States and resume a job at headquarters. And I realized that I really loved living in Europe. So I moved out of that position and took a role at Lucent Technologies. Nobody in Europe knew who they were, even though they were, flying high and acquiring 80 companies in the course of, they probably acquired even more than that. But I took the job because I wanted to learn about channels and I wanted to do more than marketing. I wanted to get more on the sales side and do channel development. And so I started working there. And shortly after, they spun what is known today as Avaya. So I was able to get in and start at Avaya, and we really had to start from scratch. We did the whole partner program new because they went from selling hardware to selling software and services. So you need a completely different mentality and a different partner program, different education. And they did new branding, which we implemented in Europe. They did it in the States. I was able to go to FIFA. So I sat there and watched Germany and Brazil play, which was fascinating. And after a while, I was a bit outspoken about some of the acquisitions, and we had a lot of management change and a lot of restructuring. And I had been with them about 8 years, and it was just the time to step out. So I did, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just see what it's like to start working for myself, which I think a lot of people do. And it started as interim management and then quickly turned into a company that wanted to focus beyond just marketing and start to really look at what's happening within the sales and pre-sales side that is affecting sales.
Wow, what a great career path. You know, your international perspective, another thing that I'm very interested in. The interesting thing that I heard you say in there is all of this international business technology. And one of the things I'll just say is in the United States now, there is a lull in customer experience. There are some naysayers or detractors who are talking about the failures or the discrepancies in customer experience. And I feel like the spirit of CX is waning a bit. I hope it changes fast in 2024. But in the US, and what's interesting about that to me is, like any trend, right? Somebody will say CX is not doing well, and then somebody else will jump on and say, yes, you're right for this reason and that reason. And I'm fascinated because almost everywhere else in the world, CX is thriving. And it's this amazing moment in time for change. You know, I saw your body language there, but what I would say is CX in terms of it's one of the better avenues to actually implement change in organizations and in markets where it's a little more mature, like I'll say Dubai as an example. They have the happiness metric in their governments and across their industries. So to see a government metric associated with customer experience tells you that it's not dead everywhere in the world. I don't see the US government coming up with the happiness metric anytime soon. However, there are countries where, whether it's in the Middle East or in Africa or other places, CX is absolutely accelerating and thriving. But it looked like you might be on the detractor side. Is that right?
It depends on where you are and where you look in the industry, but a lot of thoughts around that. We originally started to do secret shopping, and it has different names depending on different clients and what they want to call it. Sometimes it's mystery shopping. Sometimes it's sales journey assessment because they want it to sound a little bit more assessment-like. But we started it in, I think, 2014, 2015. And while we had been dabbling with looking at websites and giving feedback on how offers are constructed and value propositions, Microsoft, which was a client since I started the company in 2005 or 2006, and they came to us and said, listen, we've been hearing from analysts like Jay McBain, and others in the industry that if you affect and improve customer experience, you can move the revenue needle positively. What do you think about that? And what do you think we could do to measure it? And we had been dabbling in doing secret shopping and looking at websites, as I said. And so we came up with this idea of what if we just buy and see what the experience is like. And I had also done a PR gag while I was at Lucent, where they were in the contact center business. And so for Christmas, we called and listened to 50 music on hold varieties. And then we ranked them and we drew up a press release and we gave awards and talked about the music on hold. And so that was all part of what started us brainstorming and eventually led to, why don't we just buy? And so we started to do that. We started with a pilot of 40 companies in Europe. So maybe that's why it's a little better internationally than perceived to be in the States right now. But the reason I think that maybe we've got a decline in CX is a couple of reasons. One is I think we've done a disservice to the market in LinkedIn and other social networks where customer experience has become, and I'm going to upset a lot of people, customer journey mapping. And this is typically some consultant or company that comes in and does a workshop around all the different touch points you have with your customers. And you get the Post-it notes going and they're all up on the wall and everybody says, these are all the touch points. And then they lay them out either linearly or if they're a bit more advanced, then they say, no, we think they actually go to this touch point and then that one, and it's not so clear. And then everyone in the room or jointly comes up with a service level agreement and a quality base that they want to offer at their touch point. And this is fantastic. It gives a really great picture of desired state. What we're not doing often enough, even though we've done it almost 800 times, is looking at status quo. And there is a huge gap between those two.
Keep going. Like I'm subscribed. I've clicked subscribed and I want to hear more. So far, I'm following your narrative very closely. So yeah, I agree with you because I do journey mapping. I work through these challenges with major brands, and I agree with everything you've said so far. So what is it? Because I think what you're really pointing to is it typically will stall there. It'll stall at the idea of best state. I also think you have another number of other contributing factors, such as misaligned incentives for those stakeholders. They're really focused on getting the improvements to their touch point as long as they don't have to share their budget or time with another touch point to achieve a common goal. So there are reasons that CX hits roadblocks, but it sounds like you've been able to pierce through that somehow. So what happens then? A company goes to journey map. They assess the ideal state, and then take me through this next step through the status quo and how these things become real.
Yeah. So if you have gone through that exercise, you can then do a gap analysis and put together an improvement plan, to put it simply. But how do we actually go through that process? First of all, and this is another thing I think that we've done a disservice with in the industry, we have hashtagged CX, and we all use it, and we talk about customers, or I should say, we talk about buyers the same way that we talk about customers. And we have to remember a buyer is somebody who has not made a decision yet to buy from you. They could just as easily say no and go to another website or another shop and buy from them. They are not in the bag, so to speak. So the way you address them, the way you approach them, how you sell to them is different than how you communicate and show value and work with your customers, or you should be working with your customers. So that's the first thing. And what we do is we really look at that prospect view. So one of my questions when we're defining the persona is, okay, what would you like us to buy? What's an average deal size? Make sure it's not too big because we don't want everybody jumping hoops to do it. It has to be run-of-the-mill business and not so small that somebody's going to ignore it. And what is that deal size? What is the potential that you are going to earn or lose today? And when we look at that full process at the end of the day and we say, we're very happy to say that we would have bought from you today or we would not have bought from you today. And now we're going to tell you why in either case. You also get a sense of where you may also be losing profitability in that sales process. So for example, if I get all the way through and actually get on the phone with the sales rep, have a wonderful conversation, and that sales rep fails to send me a proposal, which by the way happens on average 2/3 of the time, that's a profitability hit as well as a revenue hit. If I go through and get the proposal and I can't, as a SMB, a small and medium business CEO, if I don't understand it, what am I going to do? I'm going to put it aside for the weekend when I have time to Google and look up the terms I don't understand. I'm going to pass it off to somebody else, or I'm just going to throw it away. And so that at best will delay time to close. And at worst, we'll lose a sale.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of things there in terms of many things that we think about in the B2C space about the front office, back office, the operational versus the marketing pieces. What really is interesting about what you're saying is this. So much, I think, what we think of is in customer experience traditionally is this: how do we communicate and how do we interact with the customer? And we often think about customer care as the human in that. But you're really pointing out this very important step, which is the sales team. What is their process like? How do they complete the transaction? How are they part of the customer experience? Because they are, and it's before the person becomes a customer, right? So it's not like after they buy, it's before they buy. There are all these human steps. It's really enlightening to talk to you about this. I haven't ever spoken to anyone about it quite like this, to be totally honest. I hope there's listeners saying, wow,
we need to do this.
This secret shopper for B2B is something we haven't thought of. Let's dive in more on that. Tell me, you talked a little bit about some of the main challenges that your partners face in improving experiences, the contracts, that sort of thing. But tell me about, maybe what would be great for the listener is, do you have a case study of how you engage and what the basic elements are of what you do, and then the outcomes? And I don't mean how you do it, because I think the audience gets it. You go through this journey and you identify things like the contract and what have you. But what I think people don't really often know is, how do they engage with someone like you? You are a unique facet in the world of customer experience. How do you typically engage with people?
Yeah, so we're either going to get a company coming directly to us, which happens, but we also get quite a few companies who embed us into their partner programs, their channel partner programs, because they want to be able to look at a subset of their partners and take a look at their maturity levels in selling and closing and being found and closing.
So I want to jump in there, because as I was prompting you with that question, I thought, wow, what a hardcore
for some reason
setup right there. What?
I don't know if it's your side or mine. So I'm sorry.
You can see
follow-up question.
Yeah.
Now I see.
as I was setting that question up, it was hitting me that sounded like such a hardcore sales setup. But I have a very strong interest in this because many listeners don't have they want to contextualize how all of us different CXers work. And in your piece, I just want to hone in on that thing you just said. A difference in what you're doing when you engage is it sounded like what you said was you get into the channel. And so if I'm a company and I have channel partners, I may not have visibility in how those channels work on a tactical, experience level. And what I do have is I have trust in my partners. I can see their revenue numbers. I can see maybe other aspects of our business relationship, but I don't necessarily have visibility into what my buyers experience or how to know which of these channel partners creates the best buyer experience. And that gap presents a huge economic impact to me, the owner, because I may be getting the most revenue from a partner that has a great experience, but I don't know how to help translate make my other partners equally as good. And if I have two different markets, why wouldn't I want to transfer the experiences that are best for sales to all my other partners? Am I following this story correctly?
Down, Dennis. I mean, if you look at if a channel director today, if they are spending their marketing, their co-op, their MDF, and they're putting it all toward a set of partners, and those partners are only closing business 1/3 of the time, that's an awful lot of money and opportunity going to the competition. Hopefully to somebody else in my channel and not to someone else's channel. So by doing this, it's not a finger pointing exercise. It's really let me help you identify your strengths and differences. And yes, along the way, identify where there are some things that aren't working in your sales process. And that could be, from website, because the website is now part of your sales team, all the way through into the sales department. And let's identify where they are against benchmarks. We have 800 companies we've done that with. So we can say, you want to walk like GoDaddy, or you want to, act a little bit more like Insight. I can benchmark you against that type of company, that type of business model. And then, do those improvements. So I know when I'm spending money on these partners, they're closing business more often. So I'm getting my better ROI that everybody wants to talk about.
Awesome. Here's where I think, just taking back to our prior conversation, and then, for me, I think if I'm a listener, I get that. Let's talk about the relationship with you. You come in, you engage at the channel level, you create value, and to be clear, we're only talking about probably one facet of your business, but you create value across the channel. You create learnings, you do the consulting stuff, but then you have some achievements. What happens after that? After that, do you just go away and come back every year? Do you help me? How do I take this relationship with you and maximize it after you tell me what I don't know? Because I think you and I just discussed, in many instances, people come in, do the journey mapping, they tell you best practices, they give you a plan of approach, maybe you get some wins, but then what happens?
Right. So we shopped, for example, a company in Atea in the Nordics. They're a big Microsoft partner and big VMware partner. And one of the things that we identified was they had limited managed services on offer. Now, they had been doing a lot of things in the background, but they weren't actively positioning it as services, not on their website and certainly not in conversations. And so after we did the shopping, we went in and did an exercise of due diligence. We have other assessments that we do of business growth factors. So when we went in and did that, and we identified that they had a great opportunity to do an upsell from their VMware base to Azure VMware, therefore taking some laggards in the market into the cloud, and also, selling up their base to better services. So what we did is we sat down with them and we worked through, what does that offer look like? What are the various components in it? How do you deliver it? What are the various processes behind that you have to put into place in order to get that to the customer? What are the messages around all the different use cases? And not technical messages, but what does a C-level person think about? And Azure VMware is a little hard to get too high up, but you still get an optimization conversation, doing less with more, or doing more with less, the other way around. And they went out and they sold that, and they built a multi-million-dollar euro over here funnel around that, and closed a very large RFI that went to RFP in the healthcare industry around it. So we worked, they're a big organization. They work in, multiple countries. So we worked with them over about 9 months in order to do that and train their sales team on that offer, and, work through the right customer facing decks for them to have those conversations. And so it can very much look like that.
So to rephrase, just because I want to make sure I get it, you come in, you do the sales experience, if you will, the buyer experience. That nets out all the things we already know about customer experience: the journey, the touch points, operations, services, stakeholders, gaps. You produce those improvements. Those improvements are often for maybe one channel partner, but you can apply that rapidly at scale across all the partners in a channel.
It's a package service, yes.
Perfect. And then that is the buyer experience, but then you take the step on, if someone wants to get into the funnels, so that funnels can be optimized for your buyer and then rescaled across your channel partners. And that sounds like in that process, you may do some product or service discovery that nets out new revenue streams.
Absolutely. Or customer discovery.
There?
Yeah, we call it customer insight, but customer discovery. Absolutely.
Fantastic. All right. Now, I've talked to you about why you're so amazing in the world of business, but I want to shift gears now, if I could.
I've been around a long time. That helps.
Here, let me shift gears and expose this part of our conversation, which is I'm going to be featuring you during my time of the year where I'm celebrating women in the world of business. And let's just have a little honest conversation about that. Do you know how awkward it feels to be a man trying to celebrate women in this, in any context? Like it's either hypocritical or it's jumping on a trend. And I got to tell you, my own POV, I have several daughters, and I have a wife and a mother-in-law who basically lives with me. I get it. I understand my place in this, and I understand the amazingness of all people, but particularly I do have a certain level of admiration for my wife, and she's definitely the smarter, stronger personality and caregiver and consistency, and I could go on and on. So, but to say all of that, even to like narrow it down into this gender thing, I'm not a woman. I can't relate to what you go through. But as a man on the outside, traveling the world, talking to people everywhere, men and women alike, being a pioneer like you are, being at the helm of this complex solution in an industry that is still figuring out what it is, and doing it across oceans, that's a big thing. So in my mind, I sort of see you as a shining star in the world of international women in CX. And I want to just explore, now that you know my deficiencies in understanding the celebration of women leaders, can you help me understand maybe what it takes to be you and do you, and how is that different from, how my male counterparts or how the rest of the entrepreneurs in the world are working? Can you just take me to school on this whole thing? What's it like to be a
We have a
powerful
delay again.
international woman in business?
So we had a delay again. That's a tall order. But I will.
Tell me about it.
Try. I also have to say, being in Europe, watching a lot of what is happening in the States, I understand what you're saying, but I also think that there's, because it's the States and it's the land of extremes, there's
Yeah.
also a lot of dad bashing and trying to dumb down the male. And here in Europe, people roll their eyes at that and find it to be a bit cartoonish. But what is it like? It's gotten better over the years. I would say I went through a large part of my career thinking that I didn't ever have any problem with men or other women, which can sometimes be worse. And looking back on it, I was probably in a bit of a denial, because I certainly have my stories to tell, just like many other women. Growing up in business the way that I have, I had something absolutely inappropriate said to me. For example, what did you have to do to pay for that watch?
Whoa.
Which was taken
I was
to
wondering
HR.
like what it would be, but I'm like, yeah, that's that. Okay.
Say it to me today, Okay. I was junior on the team. It was said to me. I did the right thing, took it to HR. But the bottom line was, he's staying and we'll give you a transfer anywhere you want. It was said in a much nicer way, but that was the bottom line.
I understand. But I don't think you're trying to sensationalize that statement as much as you're drawing attention to the conversations that can take place in a workplace and how our genders completely distract us from conversations that matter around making sales.
Absolutely.
For
And
our customers.
a lot of people work very hard, and the place to meet people is work, so it gets very blurry. And very gray. And, over the last 10 years, let's say, that grayness has been beaten out of it, in many cases for good reasons. But I think that standards today are much different in the workplace. There are many more people who are willing to listen and act and take accountability. And that is something that did not exist for a long time. Women who are in my position today and show up today have fought that battle, either proactively or reactively or, reflectively. Things happened to me in the past. I'm going to call it out when I see it in the future, because now I have my gravitas. I have my position and I have my voice. And so, time changes a lot of that. Circumstances change a lot of that. And women today who are just entering the workforce are going to have different battles to fight, just like everyone else. But that was real, and time took care of a lot of it. I also had some really good male mentors. And that's something that we talk a lot about women's groups. And I sometimes am a little bit down on women's groups. I don't know why I'm going to get in trouble again, but I don't know why I need a group just to associate with women when I'm working with men and women and all kinds of different people. I want to meet and network with a diverse group of people. I know that's the way it's been done with men's groups for many years, but just to replicate that doesn't seem like the solution to me. So I was lucky enough to also have men who mentored and mattered in my life, who didn't just say, you need to do this better and you need to do that better, but they gave me contacts. They made, network connections. They gave me a referral, and it helped. And that's, how I built the business, with men and women supporting me, referring me. But I have to say, being in high tech and telco, there are a lot more men that held their hand up.
Thank you for having the honest conversation with me about this. I'm fascinated to be a contributor to inclusivity and diversity, not because of those terms, because I think in the US, we have a lot of woke, go broke things going on.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, when humans help other humans emotionally or from a business perspective, it's really the culture of kindness. And so much of the competitiveness or the wars going around the world or the aggressiveness in our entertainment, there just needs to be other voices to balance that in terms of kindness and success and collaboration. So I really appreciate that you've put that light on it. And really, while we're talking about woman leadership, you're really just talking about true leadership. Can you survive the adversity? Can you learn from it? Can you apply the optimizations? Can you make the journey for those that come after you more efficient or more productive? All of these experience strategies that you apply to businesses like your own or others also sound like they're reflected in your strategy for life. And I think for that reason, I'm really glad I've had you on the show today to talk about experiences and women's issues, of which I'm still learning a lot.
No, I think you're right. Leave the work world better when you go than when you came into it. I absolutely agree. And generally in life as well.
Leanne, I feel like it's been fun talking to you. I've learned some things. I feel like I made a new friend over there across the ocean. Is there anything you'd like to share with the world that maybe I didn't touch on for the audience that can make their year, their business, their gender experiences better?
Their business gender. Okay. I'm going to tilt toward business only because.
Yes. This is your show. You can tilt to whatever you want.
Yeah, because I think I can maybe give a little gift. There's something that's going to happen in Europe in October 2024. It is called NIS 2. It is a new cybersecurity directive, not guideline, directive. And it comes with hefty fines starting at 10 million euro and fines against the CEO. Now, it's for any company, regardless of where you're located, which is the reason, and you have an international crowd. So this is the reason I'm saying this. Regardless of where you're located, if you are selling into the EU, you need, and over 10 million, so bigger companies, you need to be compliant. Doesn't matter that you only have a sales office sitting over here. If you are selling into the EU, you're required to be compliant. And people who aren't aware of this are going to get caught. And, it's the bigger ones that'll get, the EU needs money. So, they'll start to get the what is it called? I'm losing my English.
Clients out there.
They'll start to get audited.
I love that you have ended this on a valuable note for anyone listening where they can be prepared for the future and protect themselves. Again, I think it's testament to the kind of value that you add. I will try to get from you some links to this thing you're talking about so I can include it in the show description for the audience. And I will, of course, will put your contact information in there. Leahanne, thank you so much for being on CX in the Wild. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And come over to Austria.
Thanks for joining us today. If you'd like to access other podcasts, YouTube videos, or join Dennis on other adventures around the world, be sure to connect with us at www.globalvoiceofcx.com. Until next time, stay curious.